And welcome back to the Doug Karns program here on All Noise Radio. 267-495-4866 is my phone number, or leave me an email at dougkarnsprogram@gmail.com. All right, last break we were talking about Obama's new deficit-cutting, tax-increasing plan. And the reason we're talking about this is because if you haven't listened to the show enough yet, you understand that, or at least you've heard me talk about the Depression of 1920 and how we lowered spending by 50% and we lowered the tax rate for everybody down to 25% or lower. And we got the roaring 20s out of it. I mean, the Depression of 1920, I know you've heard me say it so many times, but I got to repeat myself here because we got to learn our history to understand what's happening now. History always repeats itself. So we had 12% unemployed in America in 1920, all because of the progressive tax rate that was raised. Woodrow Wilson raised it to 75% for the wealthiest Americans. It just killed jobs, and jobs kept drying up. So Harding and Coolidge came in 1920, dropped spending and the tax rate, and then we got 6% unemployment the next year, so it dropped by 6 points. And then the year after that, it dropped down to 2%. 2% unemployed, which is everybody who wanted a job had a job at that point. I think that number is usually around 4%. 4% is like the teenagers, any working able-bodied teenager or college kid is, and the ones that aren't working. That's pretty much what that includes. So 2%, and we are up to right now 9.1%, and it hasn't dropped in the last couple of years. All this spending, all these stimulus plans, all these ideas that Washington has does not work. The more money you keep putting out, the less it's going to work, and the worse you're going to make the situation. So, all right, let me finish up here with the AP article. On average, however, the wealthiest people in America pay a lot more in taxes than the middle class or the poor. According to the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center, this year's households make more than $1 million will pay, on average, 29.1% of their income in federal taxes. A household making between $50,000 and $75,000 will pay 15% of its income to federal taxes. So it goes back to the whole Warren Buffett's secretary pays more taxes than he does is totally not true. It's because they're comparing two different taxes, and that is not fair. And it's an outright lie to the American people made by Warren Buffett and your president of the United States. Lying straight to your face. And will deceive you any way they can to make you pass this, because the more they get you dependent on them, the more powerful they become. So this is why they're doing that. All right, so let's move on to some audio clips. That was what I just read there was from the Associated Press this week. And even them, we could show or see that this plan is not a good plan. And we'll move on with Obama here in his Rose Garden speech from Monday. But you also have to see what's coming up in the jobs plan that he just proposed the last week too, because it is not good. So let's play Obama here and we'll come back and talk about it.
Or we're going to have to ask seniors to pay more for Medicare. We can't afford to do both. Either we gut education and medical research, or we've got to reform the tax code so that most profitable corporations have to give up tax loopholes that other companies don't get. We can't afford to do both. This is not class warfare. It's math.
All right, so he says it's not class warfare, it's math. So you want to talk fair, because you want this whole fair thing, Mr. President? How about we just do a flat tax? A flat tax for everything. Income, capital gains. Even though I don't really think your profits should be taxed, but hey, I'm fine with it. You can talk me into it. Let's have a flat tax for everything. That would be fair. So the Warren Buffetts of the world, if they're paying 15%, well, let's just say 10% to make it easy, and Warren Buffett's worth $50 billion, That's $5 billion a year that you're bringing in just from Warren Buffett himself. Imagine all the other corporations and all the other millionaires and billionaires out there. And the person who's paying $30,000 only has to put out $3,000 and gets to keep $27,000 for themselves throughout the year. It's really that simple. And then with a balanced budget, you just put out what you can. If you want to do social programs, fine. You just put out what you can without going over the amount you're bringing in. So then you get everything that you want. You got your fairness. You got your loopholes closed up because there's no loopholes. If you got a flat tax, if you're paying 15% flat, there's no loophole. It's either you pay it or you don't. And then you go to jail for not paying it. So right there is your perfect scenario for fairness and closing up loopholes. So Paul Ryan, as you remember, way back in early summer, had his own deficit cutting plan, which was the most aggressive. Still wasn't the best, but it was the most aggressive of cutting trillions down in the next couple of years from the deficit, rather than this stupid cut $1.5 trillion from the budget in the next 10 years. That does nothing to our deficit, especially when our interest payments are going up and up and up, and when our credit rating has dropped. It's just not good. We need to start doing something quick. But anyway, so Paul Ryan came out on Fox News, and he kind of had his rebuttal about the class warfare thing. So let me go ahead and run this right here for you.
Let's turn to taxes, and there's a lot to talk about. I want to break it down into some bite-sized pieces. First of all, what do you think of that? It's all over the papers today. I guess the New York Times reported it first. This idea of a new minimum tax rate for millionaires to ensure that they pay at least the same percentage of their money that they get, their income, as middle-income taxpayers.
Right. So I guess what he's saying, he's going to raise the tax on capital at ordinary income tax rates. That's raising capital gains and dividends. Look, if you tax something more, Chris, you get less of it. If you tax job creators more, you get less job creation. If you tax investment more, you get less investment. At a time when experts are telling us, including like the...
All right, I just want to stop right there real quick. He's exactly right. Because when you tax more investing, you're going to get less investing. Because if they're going to be paying more, they're not going to invest as much. And if you're going to tax businesses that create jobs, see, businesses, all they want to do is they want to grow, all right? A small business starts out small, and then they create a new store if they're successful and run their company correctly, and then they open up another store, and then another, and then they become a corporation. Well, that creates jobs, not stupid high-speed rail, which does nothing. Like, first of all, can we go off on a tangent real quick about the high-speed rail? I know it sounds all good and warm inside when you talk about it, this high-speed rail that takes you from one place to the other, and it's going to create jobs. Well, it's going to create jobs for a couple years, and then they go away. It's not a self-sustaining system. Those jobs get created, they build the rail, they build the trains, and then they're done. Why do... And here's the other thing. What does a high-speed rail put back into the economy? Besides maybe a couple jobs here for an engineer and all that. What does it put back into the economy? It doesn't. Building roads doesn't put anything back into the economy. You can say, well, it gets us from point A to point B safer or faster. Well, how does that create wealth? That doesn't create wealth. That just gets you from one place to the other super fast. So, stop with the high-speed rail, all right? Nobody takes trains anymore, first of all. Who's going to take a train from Philadelphia to Los Angeles? Tell me that. Why would somebody take a 60-hour train ride when they can fly for about 10 hours? Not even 10 hours, about 5 hours. Who uses trains anymore? Besides regional rail that gets you from, let's say, Center City, Philadelphia to Roslyn, PA, that's one thing. That's understandable. You know, you might not have a car and you just have to work in the city or something. But who's taking a high-speed rail from Philadelphia across country and sitting on that train for that long when you can fly and be there in 5 hours? Oh, and did I tell you that Amtrak always runs specials about layovers? If you do a layover, you actually pay $20 more, and you add an extra 20 hours to your ride. If you don't believe me, go to Amtrak. You set up your ride, and you'll see what happens. But again, back to the Paul Ryan thing, is that companies start small. They want to grow. That's the whole point of capitalism. It wants to grow, just like Microsoft, when they started out in their garage and grew so big to be a corporation. Well, was it just Bill and his buddies that worked that corporation? No. There's like 90,000 people that work for Microsoft now. And that's what happens. And they were allowed to keep their money. But if we keep taxing on their capital gains and on their income, the economy is going to contract. These businesses are going to contract. Why would they grow? If they grow, they get penalized for paying more taxes. So that's a job killer in itself. And then the president wants his jobs bill passed, which we'll touch on in the next segment, that, you know, the jobs bill, when you give a tax credit to a company, say, you know, because in the bill itself right now, if you hire somebody that's been looking for a job for more than 6 months, you get a $4,000 tax credit. Well, that's great. That sounds great, doesn't it? Until you have to pay that employee a salary of, let's just say, $35,000 a year. So now you're putting out $31,000 just that year for that $4,000 credit. And then you don't get it the year after that. So then you're putting out $35,000 the year after that. So how does that help the business? Just giving tax credits does not help the economy. You got to let the economy work. Let businesses grow. Let them keep their money. This is their God-given right to keep the money that they earned. Look at the 1920s again. When more people were allowed to keep their money and government stopped spending, everybody had a job. And it was a long-term job. It wasn't these 2-year jobs for construction and high-speed rail. They were actually self-sufficient jobs that lasted a while until good old progressive Hoover came in and raised the tax rate again and made the economy contract to the point that the stock market crashed and caused this big Great Depression that we know of today. So, again, Paul Ryan is exactly right. You're going to tax more on these wealthy people. You're going to get less jobs. But I guess that's where the jobs bill comes in, and it's supposed to save the day, right? So, this is what you need to think about. Is this the side that you're on? Are you on the side of socialism and to the point where the government is going to tax so much that they're going to take control of the economy? And your job is going to lie in their hands. I don't think that's what you want. You know, I know things are tough right now, but it's because the government is so involved. It's just, they need to get out of the way. So, when we come back, we're up against a break here. We'll come back, we'll finish this Paul Ryan audio, and then we're going to touch on Obama's Associated Press did a fact check on his tax plan that he just came out with. So we're going to go over that piece by piece, and you decide who's lying to you and who's not. So when we come right back, we'll go over this and we'll play some more audio for you. We'll be right back.